What's up, guys? My name is Greg Coleman, and this is the first episode of No Jobbers Allowed. It's going to be a show that focuses on pro wrestling, just me giving my opinions and my thoughts about things that are going on and that are relevant in the world of pro wrestling. And it's going to also include some of my guests, aka top guys and top girls, because again, no jobbers are allowed. All right, so let's get right into it. The topic of the first show will be Roman Reigns as the Undisputed WWE Universal Champion and the five men that I think would be best suited to end Roman's reign and become the Undisputed WWE Universal Champion. So, Roman has now been Universal Champion for over 600 days. He's easily the longest reigning champion in WWE history of the modern era, not counting Bruno Sammartino being champion for something crazy like 8 years when he was champion. Hulk Hogan, I think, had a 4-year title reign. So Roman is in that group now. They pretty much have pushed all their chips into the middle of the table for Roman, on Roman, to make him as dominant of a champion as possible. So in the process of doing that, they've really sacrificed a good amount of the roster as well. During his time as champion, he has beaten Edge, Daniel Bryan, Big E, Drew McIntyre, Finn Balor, The Demon, a whole host of current main event talent, as well as some legends such as John Cena and Brock Lesnar. So, whenever you have a dominant superstar, whenever you have a dominant wrestler, the streak that a dominant wrestler is on can be used to not only elevate the wrestler who is on the streak, but it can also be used to elevate the wrestler who will eventually end that streak. The problem that WWE has traditionally had is that they get this wrong more than they've gotten it right. Okay, so prime example, Asuka was undefeated, her entire tenure in NXT, to the point where she did not give anybody the privilege of beating her for the NXT title. Instead, she relinquished and moved up to Raw. The person to finally end her streak was a person who did not need another notch on their belt or another bullet point on their resume, which was Charlotte. If you go back and you look at WCW, Goldberg was on his streak, like over 100 or something matches advertised, unbeaten, and Kevin Nash was the one to beat him. The one situation where I believe the WWF got it right was when they had Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 3 become the first man to beat Andre the Giant in something like 15 years. So you had a big heel, a monster heel who hadn't been beaten, and you had a champion that you wanted to establish. Hogan beats Andre, gives him a big boost, going on to the rest of his title reign. So, with that being thought, I put together a list of 5 competitors that I think would be best suited to beat Roman Reigns. Okay, and I think these guys would really benefit from having a signature win. And it would be something that could be used to establish them as a main event level talent, to level them up, or to just give them a boost. All right, so obviously this list is assuming that Big E won't be back by the time Roman drops his championship. So, want to send best thoughts, well wishes out to Big E as he continues his recovery from his unfortunate injury, the broken neck at the hands of Ridge Holland. So hopefully he is able to make a full recovery, and if he would like to return to the ring as a active competitor, that he's able to. All right, so I'm gonna remove Big E, because if Big E was in play, he would have definitely been number one, because I think he checks all the boxes as being a wrestler who's right on that cusp of being a main event level talent. He's a former WWE champion. Even though the way that he won the title could have been better, and then of course what happened to him losing it at day one and subsequently falling all the way down the card to even be in a position to work with someone like Ridge Holland as a part of a tag team. Um, just unfortunate all the way around. All right, so the first guy on the list in no particular order. Well, actually, is particular order. Number one on the list is Bobby Lashley. So Lashley is a guy who definitely has a Hall of Fame resume. He's a two-time WWE champion. One of the few guys that has beaten Brock Lesnar, although he had help from Roman Reigns to do it. He's U.S. champion, Intercontinental champion. Lashley has always been that guy that had the look, but for some reason, he was always stuck behind, someone else as it pertained to when he was a babyface. So, during his first run in WWE, when he was the ECW champion, he was doing a great job connecting with the audience. He was popular, doing well with getting over. He was the selection for the Battle of the Billionaires match at WrestleMania when he took on Umaga. And that was pretty much one of the main events at WrestleMania that year with the hair versus hair match between Donald Trump and Vince McMahon. But when he got his WWE title shot, he fell victim to Super Cena. So subsequently, he would go off to leave and kind of reinvent himself in Impact, and then come back years later, and now he's at the point to where he is now with the Hurt Business and everything like that. So I think if Lashley were to beat Roman, one, it would be a fresh matchup, because this would not be... Lashley is an opponent that Roman has not wrestled during his current reign as Undisputed Champion. So, like I said, he's beaten a lot of guys, a lot of main event talent, a lot of mid-card guys who they just kind of put in the spot, but he has yet to actually have a feud with Bobby Lashley. So I think that would be a great feud, and I think Lashley would benefit greatly from being able to say he was the one who ended Roman's reign. All right. Number two on the list, Cody Rhodes. Cody is a guy who left WWE and pretty much did the full tour of the Indies, going everywhere from Ring of Honor, Impact, New Japan, becoming a world champion, making himself a star, as he coins it, going from undesirable to being undeniable. Was a pivotal part in starting AEW, and got AEW off the ground, made a shocking return back to WWE at WrestleMania as the mystery opponent for Seth Rollins. And his first promo on Raw spoke about returning to the WWE in order to capture the one title that has eluded the Rhodes family as it pertains to World Championships, and that's the WWE title. So having Cody be the one to ultimately end Roman's reign would be a great story. It would definitely be a huge, massive bullet point for Cody's resume, and it will go a long way in establishing him as a legit main event star in the WWE. All right. So we got Lashley at 1. We got Cody Rhodes at 2. Number 3, Braun Breaker. Braun actually would benefit more than anyone if he was the one to have a feud with Roman and ultimately beat him and become undisputed WWE Universal Champion. Because by the time he would be in position to, he wouldn't have accomplished nearly as much as Bobby and Cody has. He doesn't have a long indie career to speak of. He's never been the world champion of another promotion. So if he could come from being NXT champion up to the main roster and be the one to dethrone Roman, that would be huge. That would be the win that his resume and his legacy would be built off of. So when people talked about Braun Breaker, one of the first things that they would mention about him is that he was the guy who ended the longest reigning title reign in modern era by beating Roman Reigns. All right, number 4, Finn Balor. Even though it won't be a fresh matchup for Roman, and he's beaten Finn before, as well as beating the Demon, which I didn't agree with. I felt like they were just feeding way too much to Roman by having him beat the Demon unnecessarily. But Finn is a guy that has kind of hovered around the main event scene, but for whatever reason has just not been able to either break through all the way or stay there. So he was the first ever Universal Champion. He got hurt and, has had to relinquish the title the next night. Never's quite gotten back to that point. Went back to NXT, reinvented himself a little bit, became the Prince, became NXT champion, further established himself as arguably the greatest NXT superstar in the history of NXT. Came back up to the main roster and had his 2 shots at Roman, and just nothing came to pass from it. All right, so if they could circle back to Finn, maybe have him win a Money in the Bank, win a Royal Rumble, to get him back in position to challenge Roman again and actually have him win, that would be a huge star boosting performance for Finn Balor to kind of fully elevate him out of that mid card, kind of mid to upper card level, where it seems like he currently is now. Last but not least on the list, Drew McIntyre, the Scottish Warrior. So again, Drew has been attached to Roman in the past. They have kind of teased the feud while both of those men were champions of their respective shows. With, when Drew was the WWE champion over on Raw and Roman being the SmackDown, being a Universal champion on SmackDown. They did have a match at Survivor Series, the champion versus champion match, and unlike Roman's win over Big E, which he beat him pretty much clean, Roman had a significant amount of help to help him beat Drew McIntyre, and he didn't pin Drew McIntyre. He made Drew pass out from the guillotine. So I think that there's a story there that can still be told. Again, Drew, even though he's a former WWE champion 2 times, he still hasn't had that big moment. Yes, he beat Brock, but he beat Brock at the Performance Center at pretty much the first major wrestling show that happened after the COVID shutdown. So he hasn't had that big moment, that big payoff in front of fans on a WrestleMania stage. And then the WrestleMania that he did participate in against Lashley, that was still limited amount of fans, and he did not get the win in that match. So Drew is still in need of that big legacy-making, star-making performance, and Roman could give him that. So, again, just to recap, top 5 guys who I feel should be in the running to beat Roman Reigns, or who should beat Roman Reigns, are Bobby Lashley at 1, Cody Rhodes at 2, Braun Breaker at 3, Finn Balor at 4, Drew McIntyre at 5. So feel free, let me know what you guys think. If you had to pick any superstar today in the WWE that would benefit the most, that would make the most sense, who do you feel should beat Roman Reigns to ultimately end his Universal title reign? So jump in the comments, send me an email. I'll put all that information on the channel, on this page, so I'm really interested in hearing everybody's opinion about who they think should ultimately beat Roman.